to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers, and you are in season 6 of Wrestling at Random, where the theme is more wrestling than ever. This week, that's definitely true. This is an off the beaten path professional wrestling weekly program. We have covered it a few times, or variations of it, I believe, both here in the free feed and in the bonus feed. This is the American version that most people know, not the TSN Canadian version. It is Pro Wrestling This Week, hosted by Gordon Soley and Joe Pedicino. Jeremy, we've talked about this before. I loved this television program as a kid, and it's always super fun when the randomizer pulls it.
Yes, I never knew about Pro Wrestling This Week until we did this podcast. I was not a watcher of this television program, but if I knew it existed, it would have been my favorite television program. This is amazing. It is, it's a sports center type show where they're doing highlights from territories around the country, and they're treating it like things that are going on. It's basically what you get from wrestling magazines, from like the Pro Wrestling Illustrated, exactly. But you get it a month ahead of when you would have got it with the magazines. This is a more current version.
The magazines, there was always such a lag. It was always one of the frustrating things. Whereas with this, it's usually within a week or two at most of when the stuff aired. In previous episodes, I can't remember whether it was in the bonus feed or the free feed, we talked about how great the concept was for this show and how much we wish this show existed, let's say, late 70s into the early and mid 80s, rather than basically coming on board right as the territory system was starting to, or was in full collapse. I shouldn't say starting to, was in full collapse, because they whip around all across the country. Some of these territories are in rough shape, or were never in great shape. But man, you think about, like, if you had this show in like 1982, 1983, and you're going around like Florida and Georgia and mid-Atlantic and mid-South, and man, how fun would that have been?
So Pro Wrestling This Week, the last time we reviewed this, the randomizer pulled. For any new listeners, I know we jump right into the action here, but I know we've got a lot of new listeners. But how this show works is every single week we fire up the randomizer. It's got thousands and thousands and thousands of all hours of all the internet's wrestling content. Some not available to others, some private collections even. We've got a lot of wrestling content. We spin the randomizer. It pulls something at random for us to watch. It actually pulled an episode of Pro Wrestling This Week back in Season 3, Episode 14 of the free feed. And then over on the Patreon, patreon.com/wrestling at random, where we have over 200 additional bonus episodes that you've never heard if you've only been listening to the free feed. Over there, Episode 54, it was a show called Pro Wrestling Plus, hosted by Ed Whalen. It was the Canadian version of Pro Wrestling This Week. So
much lower budget, lower rent looking version. Basically, they pretty much used all the same highlights, if my memory is correct. But yeah, this feels like more of a production than that one did, for sure.
Yeah, if you're already a Patreon subscriber and also listening to the free feed, it's in your back catalog right now. When you pay the $5 for the Patreon, it unlocks the entire back catalog for you.
Which is, you mentioned over 200. We are at nearly 220 episodes in the bonus feed. That's in addition to the 6 full seasons we have here in the free feed.
Yeah, and if you, so we are not going to talk about the history of this program, all of that information. It's in the back catalog of this free feed right now, Season 3, Episode 14. Go back and listen to that episode. Remember, everything in the free feed is also evergreen content. It's new to you if you haven't heard it. So go back and listen to that episode, and we will give you the history of Pro Wrestling This Week. That one was from 1986. This episode, like you mentioned, we're later into the dying territories, as we're March 7th. 1987 when this aired. Let's get into the episode. We open with a match already in progress. It's Grizzly Moon grabbing someone named Miss Fantasy. I don't know who any of these people are.
I believe it's Grizzly Boone.
Boone? Okay.
Yeah, so basically the show opens with this really, really quick clip of something happening with Grizzly Boone and Miss Fantasy.
We'll hear about it later in the show.
Yeah, that really is pretty much what ends the show. We go to the Open, which really always amused me because it's Pro Wrestling USA, but then the Open is all about the world. We see the flags, like it almost looks like it's the TBS studios or something. But of course, we are welcomed by Joe Pedicino and Gordon Soley. If you've never seen the show before, they're sitting at a desk. There's a ring in the background. It's that sort of look here. They welcome viewers on KCOP, KCOP in Los Angeles, and everyone else viewing. I believe the video that we are watching was from the Sacramento. TV affiliate. We are told that we will get a Matt Classic from 1971, among many other things. However, show opens with professional wrestling from Dallas, Texas. Gordon Soley describes it as a, quote, most unusual situation. And boy, is that the case. We are at a very, very dimly lit sportatorium for world-class championship wrestling in Dallas, Texas. And it is longtime referee David Manning wrestling longtime heel manager and favorite of this podcast, Gary Hart. It's shocking to me because Gary Hart, we always hear about, well, man, the one ineffective thing about him being a manager is that he couldn't take bumps. And then here he is in a match.
Yeah, no fear of taking bumps in this match here with David Manning. We hit the action. We've talked about, we've reviewed World Class from 1987 and world champion Al Perez type of the territory here.
It is rough, and it is always difficult for me as someone who grew up watching World Class. It is so hard to see just a few years past their peak. How empty it is, how, we'll talk about when we get to the top 10 in World Class later on, the state of things, particularly with the Von Erich family, such as it was in quotes. But the look of these two men in this match, Gary Hart in tights and a singlet, he basically looks like he's the third member of State Patrol from late 80s, early 90s WCW in terms of the type of tights and singlet. A non-colorful Bret Hart type of attire. David Manning is just like wearing clothes. He's just a regular dude. And this starts with Gary Hart having David Manning in a variation of an Indian deathlock. And then we hear, so I guess maybe this wasn't at the Sportatorium. It was just so dark and you couldn't tell it was in a big arena because they say this is part of Pro Wrestling Star Wars.
That would have been Reunion Arena then if it was a full Star Wars show. But they describe Manning being sent into the ropes. They describe it as, quote, a struggle from one rope to the other. And this was a perfect description by Mark Lawrence.
Truer words have never been spoken. So I'm looking up the cage match listings for Gary Hart, professional wrestler. His last listed match was in a losing effort against Sting in the Omni in October of 1989. So this was taped. Wow. So this was from the February 2nd, 1987 World Class Wrestling Star Wars show from Fort Worth, Texas, the Tarrant County Convention Center.
Right, Fort Worth, okay.
Which saw Dingo Warrior, the future Ultimate Warrior, defeat Bob Bradley for the Texas Heavyweight Championship. The main event was Kerry Von Erich against Brian Adias. Also, I would imagine a Matt Classic, if there ever was one, Abdullah the Butcher against Tony Atlas.
Manning lands a couple punches. He's biting Gary Hart. Hart rolls outside, grabs a microphone, uses it as a weapon because David Manning didn't see it. He gets hit in the head with it. Hart doesn't want to pin him yet. Instead, he throws the referee out of the ring. And at this point, Red River Jack hits the ring, slams Gary Hart. Manning then hits a bottom rope splash, and the ref slides in to count to 3. David Manning is your winner with the help of Red River Jack.
This Red River Jack was Bruiser Brody. under a mask. If you're wondering if every promotion was doing a Midnight Rider gimmick, as we've talked about multiple times, whether it's the Yellow Dog or Stagger Lee, we had it here with Bruiser Brody in World Class.
Bruiser Brody adopted the masked persona of Red River Jack in World Class in late 1986 as a creative workaround following a loser leaves town match stipulation.
Workaround. The word creative is doing a lot of work there.
He lost the match to Abdullah the Butcher at the Christmas Star Wars event in December of 86. So we go to a graphic as we head to commercial that says, quote, "Like fine wine gone sour, Abdullah the Butcher up next."
An interesting description for the Matt classic. Look back into the past and the archives, and Abdullah the Butcher match. We sadly get only a few seconds of a commercial featuring Walt Davis, the Chevy Man. I wanted more, however, that was not in the cards for us. We're back from the break. We're still in World Class, as now, I guess this was from the following week's television. Gary Hart in a full suit and Bill Mercer in a sweet 80s Adidas sweatshirt are talking. And what happens from here is we are getting a rematch. It is going to be a street fight. Red River Jack will be barred from the building. And Gary Hart ends this conversation by saying, "I'm going to smack your face until your nose bleeds." I love Gary Hart.
Yes. Hart said that he wished that microphone was a hammer so that we wouldn't have to see David Manning's face. Looking forward to they're going to do it again. They're running it back one more time. Manning says that they will have a street fight. It's confirmed. We go back to Joe Pedicino, who introduces the Matt Classic of the Week. We're going to go to Detroit in 1971 for a match where Abdullah the Butcher, managed by J.J. Dillon, taking on a guy named Gil Guerrero. I looked it up. Gil Guerrero, not related to Eddie Guerrero or the renowned Guerrero wrestling family.
Yeah, I was going to say, I did not see many shades of the same athleticism from Gil Guerrero that you would see from Eddie, Hector, Armando, Chavo. No. But you mentioned J.J. Dillon. This reminded me of, was it J.J. Dillon, or am I imagining things that was managing a very wild Samoans on one of those territory shows? This was very similar to that. Might have actually been
Detroit as well. That is correct. J.J. Dillon looks exactly how you'd think J.J. Dillon looks. We've talked about the syndrome he has where he's always looked old and now is old and looks exactly the same as he's always looked.
Yeah, there have been marginal at best changes for about the last 40 years plus in the appearance of one J.J. Dillon. We start this in progress as Abby is hitting throat thrust. He is eating Gil Guerrero's nose in the corner in this small dark studio in Detroit. This is right now. Wow, it's 1971. And Abdullah the Butcher already has those drag racing strip scars all up and down his forehead vertically already.
We get a slam. He hits his running elbow drop, but Abby pulls him up at 2. Instead, he hits it again. We're told this elbow drop is called the Sudanese meat cleaver, and he gets the pin with it. He keeps choking this man after the bell and the victory.
What a tremendous name for that running elbow drop. I can't believe I had never heard that before.
No.
We're back to the Pro Wrestling This Week studio, and Gordon and Joe Pedicino are saying in March of 1987 how incredible it is that Abdullah the Butcher has been doing this for so long. He would go on to do it for so much longer.
Much longer.
Amused me greatly. We go from there to Portland, Oregon to see Mike Miller take on hot new prospect Sky High Lee. Sky High is tall and skinny. He has blue tights, yellow knee pads, and I immediately am like, oh my God, I know exactly who this man is. This is Big Sky from a very, very, very brief run in WCW. And I'm like, I hope I'm wrong. These are the things that I hate that I know. It makes me ashamed. It makes me wonder why I can't remember other more important things in my life. I looked up cage match, and there it was. It's Big Sky, who is also Nitron, but I remember him doing, like I said, doing a few things in WCW as Big Sky on WCW Saturday Night. Cage match rating of 3.06 for this man.
Others that aren't Adam might know this man as Tyler Mane, who gained fame as an actor playing Sabretooth in the X-Men movies, as well as playing Michael Myers in the Rob Zombie remake of the film Halloween.
That really is the most me thing ever. That this guy who starred in major motion pictures, I've never seen those movies. I had no idea that he'd ever done that, but I remember him from a 2-week run in WCW in the early 90s as Big Sky.
Lee throws a million haymaker forearms that did not look good. Miller clotheslines him on the top rope. He rolls him up for a pin, but the ref catches him using the trunks. Lee then hits a hip toss. He goes for the pin off of a hip toss. Miller looks like he kicks out at 2, but the bell rings and the ref raises Lee's hand for the win. What happened? And then why did they show this on Pro Wrestling This Week?
That's the main thing my notes is. Why did they show us? This was the best thing from that week of Portland TV that they could send in. Just imagine what else was on this show. Also, my description of Mike Miller just says he looks like a non-Samoan Samoan. Yes. That's the only way I could describe this man. But yes, the finish, the ref counts so 3. It looks like he kicked out. The announcer is confused. The most important part of this match is that you can get your copy of Wrestlemania at Rich's Cigar Shop or the Old Milwaukee Pizza Factory.
This was the second fall of a 2 out of 3 falls match, too, which is also weird. So it's like, was this match so bad that they just decided, no, 2 straight falls, this match is over?
I feel like they had committed to featuring Big Sky as a star of the future on Pro Wrestling USA before this match happened. Like maybe they had even said on the previous week's show, we'll have Big Sky next week. And then they were sort of locked into having to show this. I guess Portland maybe during this time did a lot of 2 out of 3 fall matches, because I feel like one of the other Pro Wrestling This Week, or the Canadian version of it, one of those 2 shows had a tag team match from Portland that was bad and was also joined in the middle of either the second or third fall.
Gordon Soley takes us to the office of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, where we're going to get ratings. We're going to get our top 10 lists here, and we're going to get an editorial comment from Bill Apter. All right, let's go. Craig Peters is in the PWI offices to run down the top 10 women, and then we'll talk about then he'll run down the top 10 wrestlers in world class. So let's start.
Love seeing Craig Peters here, because as a kid, like, I knew that Eddie Elner was fake, you know, the heel columnist. So many of the writers were fake. And so obviously we see Bill Apter. You'd see Bill Apter on TV. You knew he was a real guy. But I was not 100% convinced that Craig Peters was a real person, and or maybe they just brought some in and said they're Craig Peters. But that was like 9-year-old me was very excited seeing this in real time, getting to see who Craig Peters actually was. His office is amazing. It's just wall-to-wall magazine covers. It reminds me of Mike Sempervive's office for a Wrestling Observer Live television show. There's just not a random Baltimore Ravens or Washington Nationals stuff, I guess, because neither team existed in that form in 1987. But yeah, good stuff here.
March 4th, 1987. They're going to list out the women's top 10 rankings. They do not reveal this list from 10 to 1. They start with number 1. This drives me nuts. Who starts a list at number 1? What are we doing?
Let's go in descending order of excitement. Let's not build up to who's the number 1. The big reveals who's number 10, which I then guess tells us who didn't make the top 10. It's very strange. They would do this every week. Your top 10 women: Misty Blue Summers, or as she's listed here, Misty Blue Simmers. I guess if I need to go to the witness protection program, I can be Adam Simmers. It may be more of a statement on my personality at times. I'm not sure. We have Sensational Sherry, the Fabulous Moolah being ranked 3rd. I believe that's contractually obligated. Linda Dallas, Leilani Kai, Wendy Richter, Velvet McIntyre, Candy Divine, Judy Martin, favorite of this podcast, and Kat LaRue.
I love that you said that because my notes literally say number 9, favorite of the podcast, Judy Martin. That's exactly how I wrote it down.
That's hilarious. We do not sit on the same couch and take notes together, by the way.
No, but we do love Judy Martin. She is fantastic. She's one of those women, along with Joyce Grable. Where is she on this list? This list is now a farce if Joyce Grable's not on it.
Yeah, this list is invalid. There's a hanging chad here that is going to cause this to be tossed out.
But yeah, Judy Martin is one of those we knew about her, but boy, have we come to appreciate her after watching her performances over the course of doing this podcast. She's really
100%. She's in that list of people who, like, you know, we always talk about that, like, we did not know how much we liked them until we saw them on this podcast. Opened our eyes.
The world class top 10. These are the men of world class.
So sad. It starts great. Kevin Von Erich. You can never go wrong with Kevin Von Erich. And world class is a top wrestler. Totally fine.
Number 2, the Dingo Warrior. I see what they're trying to do here.
Your newly crowned Texas heavyweight champion, the future Ultimate Warrior. The number 3 wrestler.
Oh boy, does it fall.
Class championship wrestling. Lance Von Erich. The fake Von Erich. That was a total disaster. Lance Von Erich is ranked number 3. This is even more of a tell than later in 1987 when Al Perez would be the world champion.
Tony Atlas is number 4. Brian Adias is number 5.
Another guy that when you talk about, like, oh, if he's a top heel, you got a problem. If he's like a lower mid-card heel, I got a spot for him on my roster.
He's a friend of the Von Erichs. He's hanging around lower on the card. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
But he's a top heel. You've got a rough territory. Black Bart is in your territory at number 6. That's not great.
The future Big Train Bart.
Mike Von Erich coming in at number 7.
That may be even rougher than Lance Von Erich at number 3.
Red River Jack at number 8. So Bruiser Brody cracks the top 10.
Imagine the validity or lack thereof of a list that has Bruiser Brody 5 spots behind Lance Von Erich.
And 1 spot behind Mike Von Erich.
Mike Von Erich, yes, exactly.
Steve Simpson at number 9. And we close out with the man who they just said, it's amazing he's still doing this, Abdullah the Butcher at number 10.
What a promotion. What a territory here in 1987. World-class championship wrestling. We then get Bill Apter cutting a fiery promo on the Freebirds and Michael Hayes, demanding an apology to the fans of America and calling Michael Hayes pure sleaze. I love Bill Apter, but this gave me like similar vibes to in modern days when like tiny, like 5'4", 112-pound Bryce Remsburg is getting all heated and up in heel John Moxley's face. Like, if this doesn't end in Bill Apter's head not being attached to his body by the end of next week, there's a problem.
We then go back to the studio where they tell us that we're going to get a music video package recapping the UWF Tag Team Title Tournament.
Yes.
This is the UWF of the expansion attempt of Mid-South. The Mid-South territory. So Bill Watts
UWF. This is not shoot style UWF in Japan. This is not cocaine style UWF via Herb Abrams. This is the direct lineage of the pro wrestling I grew up watching alongside World Class being Mid-South. I was very, very excited to see this music video. And we also had Eye of the Tiger from Rocky here, which I believe that has to be featured on it at least once in every wrestling show from this era.
Eye of the Tiger. The band is Survivor. It is a perfect song for a video montage recapping the tournament. This was their tag team title tournament that took place February 7th, 1987 in Fort Worth, Texas. Highlights of this video package included a Chris Adams super kick in this video, which we always love. And then, oh no, we see Chris Adams and his partner, the Iceman King Parsons. They break up. And then somehow Adams is with Terry Taylor, who also had a different partner in this tournament. I don't know what's going on. I had to stop the show to go figure out what happened. This video package It told me that Chris Adams and Terry Taylor ended up as the tag team champions, but it did not explain the tournament at all, and I was wildly confused. I had to go look up the results after this, which was not a possibility in 1987.
It's extraordinarily confusing. Like, it almost feels like there's the tournament story they're telling, and then there's something else that happened at a different time period that they're just splicing stuff in. Even when we get to the finals, like, it appears to be Sting and Eddie Gilbert against Chris Adams and Terry Taylor, but I'm confused because there's all different stuff shown during the middle. We see Adams turn on Iceman, but then we see Iceman turn on some other dude. The only thing that really is sticking with me is the sweet purple turtleneck on Bill Watts. Not a fashion choice I expected from the Cowboy.
Yeah, the tournament went like this. Dr. Death and Ted DiBiase beat Bill Irwin and Eli the Eliminator. Sam Houston and Terry Taylor, remember this tag team, Sam Houston and Terry Taylor defeated the Angel of Death and Terry Gordy. Hot Stuff and Hyatt International, the team of Rick Steiner and Sting, defeated Chavo Guerrero and the Missing Link. And then the gentleman Chris Adams with the Iceman King Parsons defeated the Fabulous Freebirds, the Buddy Roberts and Michael Hayes varietal. So now we go to the second round where Chris Adams and Iceman King Parsons defeat Dr. Death and Ted DiBiase. And during this match, Skandar Akbar's faction interfered by attacking Williams and Ted DiBiase. It led to a countout. Iceman King Parsons was content to accept the victory by countout, but Chris Adams, he had been assisting Williams and DiBiase in fending off these attackers. He wanted the match to continue. He wanted a decisive win in this tournament. The disagreement led to the heated argument between the partners, resulting in their split. Following the breakup, there was a coin toss held to determine who would select a new partner. Either Iceman would get a new partner or Chris Adams would get a new partner based on a coin toss. Chris Adams wins the toss, and he chooses Terry Taylor, who was eliminated earlier in the tournament. So he would go on to win the finals here. We'll get there in a second. As he ended up feuding with, so Iceman King Parsons turned heel with this and feuded with Chris Adams after this. So Chris Adams goes to the finals to take on, so it's Chris Adams and his new partner, Terry Taylor. They take on Rick Steiner and Sting and defeat them to win the tag team titles.
Easy enough.
So none of that came through. It was so confusing in this video package. And we cut to Gordon Soley in the studio, where I'm ready for him to explain what I just looked up. You saw a confusing video package. Let me explain what happened. I was ready for Gordon to catch me up. Gordon's thoughts on the video package? Quote, nice piece of business.
This was in 1987 Gordon Soley, which wasn't quite 1995 Gordon Soley, but also wasn't 1977 or even 1982 or 83 Gordon Soley. There's nice a certain level certain level of interest he has, and that was about the level of interest, calling it a nice piece of business and moving on. Come back from break, and we go to the PS Rumors segment where Michael Hayes, Sunshine, and Buddy Roberts are at the World of Wheels in Atlanta. They seem extremely high. They are in front of a large crowd of people, and they are very sweaty and very fired up.
Yeah, he's fired up. He's basically running down the loop of where they're going to be. He says it ends in Atlanta, which everyone's excited about. Sunshine and Buddy Roberts were there, like you mentioned, and she says that she's very impressed with the Atlanta men. So, wacky promo there. We cut back to Joe Pedicino, who tells us that the UWF is planning to come to Los Angeles, and they're bringing Major League Wrestling back to the Olympic Auditorium. We go to Birmingham, Alabama, for one of our favorite territories, Continental Championship Wrestling.
In quotes, one of our favorite territories. It is the Nightmares versus Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony and Jerry Stubbs.
for the tag titles of
for the
Continental.
Continental Tag Team titles. And I had forgotten that in 1987, we were already in. Gordon Soley is not going to try to differentiate between tag team partners who look the same and wear the same gear. It reminded me of in like even into the mid 90s or early to mid 90s in WCW, like when Harlem Heat would be wrestling, he would just call each of them the Harlem Heat. He did not attempt to differentiate. That is the same thing here. These Nightmares who are short, they're not in particularly great shape. They have two baggy white shorts or white tights over their green tights. They have face paint. They don't look particularly great. They're baby faces for some reason. But yeah, Gordon makes no attempt to tell us who these men are.
Yeah, the Nightmares end up making a hot tag. They run wild. All four men are in. Stubbs misses a clothesline, goes up and over the top to the outside. We get a tombstone.
He goes to the outside onto the hard timekeeper's table. This is like triple reinforced Japanese table type of thing. There was no chance of this relatively big man going through this.
We get a tombstone pile driver on the Dirty White Boy. And the other Nightmare comes off the top with a leg drop.
A huge leg drop. A huge Alabama Jam leg drop here in Birmingham. This was like 2/3 of the way across the ring. In my mind, when I saw this Nightmare scale to the top, I thought for sure it was going to be a diving headbutt, but this was pretty impressive.
Stubbs with a forearm off the top breaks up the pin attempt after this. He puts his partner on top, and the referee counts 3, and we have new tag team champions, Jerry Stubbs and the Dirty White Boy. Gordon calls this hardly kosher.
This also, like, this was, they throw it to the actual broadcast, which was when Gordon was doing Continental, sort of as like his extra deal on top of the other stuff he was doing. And man, is he not really into doing this. And like, there's a baseline of Gordon Soley that is still good enough, but that like good enough is the level of effort he's putting in here.
We then go to the WWF report. It's a rundown on WrestleMania 3, which is coming up at the end of the month. They run down the card as we have today. They don't have the full card yet, but Gene Okerlund tells us about the latest match added to WrestleMania 3. We get a highlight of the Honky Tonk Man hitting Jake the Snake Roberts with a guitar during the Snake Pit interview segment. And we're told that at WrestleMania 3, it'll be Honky Tonk Man with Jimmy Hart, his manager, in the corner. Jake the Snake Roberts will have Alice Cooper in his corner.
This
that's
whole
a musician.
thing. Yeah, I know who Alice Cooper is. Music I know. Movies I don't. Music I definitely know. No worries there. It's so strange, just like it was in the 1986 one, to see WWF featured on this. In the 86 one, if my memory is correct, like we just had Joe Pedicino and Gordon Soley mentioning things and having a graphic on the screen, but we did not have WWF highlights. They didn't throw it to the WWF Event Center with Gene Okerlund. Like, I don't know if WWF was actually cooperating with Pro Wrestling This Week, or this was just Pro Wrestling This Week using this stuff because, hey, it's good to throw WWF on. That looks big time on our show. But it's very, very strange to see them like operating in the same world with all the territories that they're in the process, I should say, of murdering.
Yeah, I mean, we literally just went from 87 Continental to the
WrestleMania
WWF
build.
WrestleMania build, and it's like, wow, these couldn't be two more minor league, major league differences. Holy cow.
It's also fascinating, like just how everything else on the show seems a minor league in comparison. It also feels like a more serious professional wrestling, like seeing these highlights and then going to the brightly lit WWF and seeing like the Honky Tonk Man, and there's a snake, and we'll get to the contract signing between Hogan and Andre the Giant, which is just like the worst acting you've ever seen. It really stands out how different, for better or worse, the WWF felt than everything else that was happening in pro wrestling at the time.
Yeah, we see clips of the contract signing between Andre and Hogan. Even if the acting from Hogan is terrible,
it is.
It still looks big time because you've got Bobby Heenan there doing a great job. You've got Andre looking menacing and gigantic, and then Jack Tunney and all the goons around. Like this is this looked big time, and it rolled right into a match from WWF Superstars. So they go to the
I did not expect that. Yeah,
no, a well lit arena, completely uh, 10x production value increase over everything we've seen from Portland World Class, UWF, and now this. The production value is through the roof as we see Jerry Monty taking on the Honky Tonk Man from Superstars. Honky Tonk Man's gear is horrendous. He's wearing like suspenders. It looks terrible.
I have zero recollection of this fashion era of the Honky Tonk Man. He's wearing long blue tights with crisscross suspenders attached going up over his shoulders. It's Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura on the call. Honky just hits a Randy Savage style clothesline, shake, rattle, and roll, and gets the win. Going back to the contract signing, I cannot get over the absurdity of all these men. Everyone else is wearing normal clothes. Even like Andre, for him, like he's wearing actual like civilian clothes. You've got all the lawyers, you've got Tunney, you've got Heenan, and then there is Hulk Hogan, full gear, sitting in his yellow underwear, huffing and puffing, acting so hard as he's going to sign the contract. Just peak pro wrestling absurdity.
We go from this to Memphis television. At least it was a smoother transition than if you went straight to Deep South in Atlanta. How we're going to end this show. At least you transition to Memphis, where we see Jerry Lawler. He's back in Memphis. He's wrestling someone named Boy Tony.
Boy Tony. This is it's like a combination. Poor man's Adrian Adonis knockoff. Combined with a knockoff of Boy George, I think is what they were going for.
Downtown Bruno is in the corner of Boy Tony, and he's choking Lawler from the outside.
We have seen between the bonus feed and the free feed way too much of the future Harvey Wippleman Downtown Bruno as of late.
We sure have. Boy Tony with punches, but Lawler hulks up, hits punches of his own, comes off the ropes, but Bruno trips him from the outside. Lawler trips, so he rolls right outside, punches Bruno. Lawler then slingshots back in from the apron over the top with a sunset flip and gets the pin.
That sunset flip was the only non-punch from either wrestler in at least a portion of this match that we saw. It was very funny. Downtown Bruno on commentary when we first cut to this is complaining about how Jerry Lawler isn't even a wrestler. All he does is punch. He should just be a boxer. I also thought Boy Tony's punches were really good. I guess everyone in Memphis, you had to have good punches.
Joe Pedicino introduces our international match of the week. We're going to Puerto Rico, where a man named TNT the Ninja, with his manager, the Masked Professor, is taking on Steve Blackman. And it's that Steve Blackman that we'd see 10 years later in the WWF in the Attitude Era.
Yeah, he had a brief run with the WWF during this time period. Here he's in Puerto Rico. Just very basic, almost like New Japan Young Lion gear. Do you know who TNT is, Jeremy?
No.
So TNT, I remember hearing about him a ton in the magazines, and I always wanted to see him. He did some New Japan tours. TNT is the future Savio Vega, the future Quang the Ninja.
Quang the Ninja. Okay.
So TNT, it's a little bit of Quang going on here, but is the future Savio Vega. Throws some awesome kicks, a lot of like chop thrusts to the downed opponent. This is a complete and utter squash. Steve Blackman, looking jacked but green, gets zero offense whatsoever in this match.
Loses to the Cobra Clutch. We get a Katie bar the door from here. Love it.
I also love it was cool. We had English language commentary here for this match from Puerto Rico. TNT wins. The Professor comes in, and then this is what they do every time. TNT puts somebody out with the Cobra Clutch. The Professor puts a blanket of sorts over the upper body and the head of the downed Steve Blackman, who is out cold. And then TNT reaches under the blanket and does something. We don't know what. He does something to Steve Blackman to wake him up. That's the big secret. What is he doing to these men to wake them up after he puts them out?
I do love that if you are put out, you have to be awoken. usually by your opponent slapping you on the back, but this one is a trick to get you to wake up. But if you don't wake up, then you will die. So it's
See,
key that they get woken up by their.
I like to think that you won't die. You just will never wake up. And in some ways, I wonder if that's the key to eternal life is being a wrestler, being put in a sleeper in the 70s or 80s, and then like 80 years later, like your great granddaughter finds you and wakes you up, and you can just live for another 40 years. That's kind of what I'm going for.
But she'd have to wake you up with a slap to the back.
Yes, or put a blanket over you and maybe do a nerve hold to the trapezius.
Deep South Wrestling in Atlanta, Georgia. We get.
By the way, when I saw Deep South Wrestling in Atlanta, Georgia, I thought we're going to do a little bit of future time shifting, and we are going to get a chronicle of the Brian Alvarez, Ted the Trailer McNailer feud.
Instead, we have Mike Golden with Miss Fantasy taking on Grizzly Boone. Here's what happened at the top of the show. This is the clip we saw at the beginning. We get the Nightmares hitting the ring, but different Nightmares than we saw earlier. Who is putting this show together?
Masked Nightmares from a different territory that are not the same Nightmares. We should give a bit of a fashion corner, a visual cue to the listeners for these two men. Mike Golden looks like every blonde territory heel from this era ever. Grizzly Boone he's a big hillbilly guy, but he's not wearing your like hillbilly gym style overalls with a red shirt. He's wearing a King Kong Bundy type singlet.
The Nightmares hold Boone down as Golden drops a knee off the top to Boone.
Well, you're leaving out the whole reason this all happened. Boone, Fantasy tries to pull Mike Golden out of the ring so he does not get beat up anymore by Big Grizzly Boone. Boone tries to stop her. She slaps Boone. Boone chases Fantasy around the ring in ridiculous fashion. In more ridiculous fashion, she trips over Golden in the most intentional way possible back in the ring. Falls right into the arms of Grizzly Boone, who picks her up high over his head in a bear hug and kisses her. This leads to our second set of Nightmares for the evening coming out to make the save.
They're dropping knees off the top onto Boone and until Don Sanders, Ranger Ross, Steve Lawler, and the locker room empty.
The bootleg Lawler that we saw like a couple of years ago. I think it was on the bonus feed. I think it was a Patron Richard selection. It would have to be. You left out that one of the men on commentary here in Atlanta, Georgia, Nick Patrick.
Yes, Nick Patrick was our commentator. Yes. Son of the assassin.
Yes, future NWO referee himself, longtime WCW senior official Nick Patrick.
We then get a graphic for the AWA upcoming dates, and the credits roll. Like Gordon and Joe didn't tell us goodbye or anything. The credits just roll and the show ends. Yeah,
this was like, these shows are always going to be fun because you're seeing a bunch of different territories. Anything that's bad goes away pretty quickly, and you're on to the next thing. It's like, oh, what territory are they going to show? What is this going to be? And it's always so fun to see the differences between the visual presentation from territory to territory, what the announcers sound like, what the level of talent is. But as a show, you could tell they were putting in less effort to pro wrestling this week at this point in March of 1987 than they were a year prior at that episode of 1986 that we reviewed. Obviously, the writing was on the wall for the territory system itself, and I think the writing was on the wall, unfortunately, for this as a television program.
Favorite thing on this show for you?
Oh, man, I don't know. In ring, maybe that wild top rope leg drop from one of the Nightmares was pretty cool. I mean, I'll say right now, the worst thing on the show is me remembering that Sky High Elite was Big Sky.
Sure.
That was, I feel shame. I would say unapologetically, even though it was terrible, my favorite thing on the show is Gary Hart versus Bill Mercer. Or excuse me, David Manning, I should say. Gary Hart versus Bill Mercer would be even better.
Yes. I mean, in ring, it's hard to say.
The Kings are slim.
Ooh, boy, are they. Yeah, that's probably I'd say no.
Jerry Lawler punches.
The Jerry
Maybe.
Lawler stuff was good. The worst thing on the show is much easier. The worst thing, honorable mention to reading top 10, 1 to 10 instead of 10 to 1. That is honorable mention. But worst thing on the show for you.
Honky Tonk Man's gear. Like
horrible gear. Yes.
It walked so easy Money's gear could run.
For me, that wildly confusing video package, it had all the elements. We had Chris Adams super kicks. We had a lot of
awesome wrestlers, like
big
UWF
stars,
was super
big
fun
stars.
back then.
Yeah, big stars happening, and like tag team tournament. We had Eye of the Tiger, and so it had all the pieces, but for some reason the recipe turned out a terrible meal because it was just wildly confusing.
Well, think about what else was on this show. We had a World Class 1987, Continental 87, Deep South Wrestling, a lot of terrible stuff, a lot of horrible doomed promotions. There is no excuse for the UWF, even in 1987, for a Mid-South feature to be one of the worst things on the show. That is a testament to how horrendously that video was edited.
And with that, we are going to wrap it up. Always a fun time when the randomizer pulls something wacky for us to watch, like pro wrestling this week. You never know what the randomizer is going to pull every single week, so you'll have to make sure that you stay subscribed to the podcast. Subscribe through any podcatcher of choice, however you're listening to this now. If you prefer the video version of this podcast, also available over at the YouTube channel, search youtube.com. Go ahead and search there for Wrestling at Random podcast, and throw us a like, a subscribe. Helps us work the algorithm so other wrestling fans can find the show. Even if you don't consume your podcasts through the video form, a like and subscribe helps us out there. If Spotify is your audio podcatcher of choice and you're listening to the show on Spotify, fun fact, you can also watch the video version right there where you're listening to the audio version. They're both also located in the Spotify player as well. And you can also get, we already mentioned all the back catalog here, the free feed. That's always available to you. Evergreen content. Like you mentioned earlier at the top, 220 plus as of the time of this recording episodes get unlocked when you subscribe to the Patreon over at patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom. And make sure you're following us on all the social media platforms at Wrestle at Random. That's the best way to interact with the show. That and the YouTube comments, obviously, are great ways to interact with the show. We love to hear about your memories, you watching this for the first time. We love to hear all about your interactions and love of pro wrestling like us. So with that, we're going to wrap it up and call it a podcast. Adam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Joe Pedicino and Gordon Soley. This wasn't your finest effort, but still just a great, super unique wrestling show. And yeah, we'll see what next week brings us.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.